on Scry-fi. We're talking about Strange New Worlds episode number 9, the Subspace Rhapsody, the musical. Almost thought about singing that intro, but you don't want to hear that.
Yeah, that would have been great if we could have written the whole song for our review.
Obviously this is the musical, the Star Trek and the musical that we were warned about or told.
Like all of these episodes, this is total spoiler stuff.
Yes.
So make sure you've watched it and then come back here.
Yep. In general, did they jump the shark? Is it too far? What do you think?
The premise of it is kind of far-fetched, but is it more far-fetched than Abraham Lincoln in space?
Or just any one of
talking rocks. I mean, So it was enough to do the job and give an in-universe reason for it. It was cool, and it was fun, and it was creative, and it was something different. So that's cool, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I loved it, actually. The songs,
once you're accepting of it, like they did a really good job of telling you it was coming. If you had no idea, and this was the episode after the last one with the whole...
I almost wish they hadn't told anybody about it. And you just watching Star Trek and this happens, and you just like...
I think they're smart.
To get all this.
I think they were really smart to do it, because once you prepare yourself... there's a lot of times where I went to go see a movie or something like that, and you thought
it was going to be something right. Well, it was hard for me to prepare myself because they told you it was going to be a musical, but they didn't really tell you how this was supposed to happen. So if they had come on and just done a musical and there hadn't been anything to it, it still might have been okay, actually, because in a musical, in the world of musicals, the characters don't know they're singing. Right? They just are having a conversation and we see it as a song. They don't go, why are we singing? Like this. So if they had done an episode and it was just a musical and then it just goes on and you're just supposed to say, okay, I guess what really happened was some kind of non-musical version of this, and we, the audience, just see it as a musical for fun, it wouldn't do anything to the in-universe Star Trek world.
Well,
this is probably more clever to do it this way.
So. I had my money on something like a Trelane or a Q or something.
Oh, I thought for sure there had to be an intelligence behind it, and maybe their intelligence was the intelligence behind it. Like it, something about the way. Yeah,
you said it already. I love the episode too. The only nitpick, so I'll get over the nitpick and then we can gush about the whole thing. But the only nitpick I had is the same thing that I'm having with a lot of recent sci-fis, which is there's multiple universes. That means you can do whatever you want, which is like not true, because it's multiple universes given a branch from a certain type of reality. Right.
Well, and also you say, okay, there's infinite universes, but there's going to be proportionately fewer universes where unlikely things happen than there are universes where. So the odds of breaching that universe that's really far out is really, really low. But I think there was probably also something going on here with harmonics and the way the frequencies interacted with the...
They started it which might have opened up the thing. The problem is that infers that there is a universe somewhere where it's always a musical, and that's not how this works.
But
that's not how.
Like you said, though, maybe they created it. Maybe they kind of like when Beverly Crusher got stuck in her own little bubble universe, and her mind created her consciousness created that universe.
The science kind of vague, which is a good thing in a way.
Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere if you really try to get in deep with it. You just have a little bit of techno babble, and
isn't just this episode. It's the entire Hollywood treatment of what this could mean, where they think, now everybody can be cartoons. No,
quantum kind of becomes like radiation was in the 1950s movies. where radiation could do all these crazy weird stuff because
yeah,
but
like evolution,
whatever,
yeah.
I mean, Star Trek's kind of been in that zone for a while, so
sure. So past that little nitpick, the whole thing was so entertaining. I was just smiling the entire time.
Now, one thing I will say though is that even though I really liked the songs, I enjoyed them, and I was actually kind of blown away by some of them. I was really like, wow, that went a little bit further than I even thought they would go in terms of quality and everything. I can't see myself like, I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, and I was when it came out and watched it. And the Buffy musical, is great. I love the Buffy musical. But the Buffy musical, I would also listen to those songs in the car and like as an album.
Yeah.
I can't see myself doing that with these songs.
There's a lot of musicals that have great stories, but not songs that you would listen to. And then there's a lot of musicals that just have the right songs, And
I can't say that I can't say that it's like a problem with the quality of the music. I think the music writing was good, but I think there's something about their stories. And really, one of the points I want to make is that I was pleased to see that, like the Buffy musical, it wasn't just a sidestep with a bunch of musical stuff, that they actually utilized moments in this episode to move the character stories forward. Like there were critical plot moments that took place within this episode, both emotionally and just in terms of the character arcs and the relationships. So there were important events within this, and that's what I loved about the Buffy musical too, that they didn't just do it as a side thing, but there were critical, pivotal moments in the plot of the Buffy musical. And so they did that here too, but despite that, I still don't feel like there's quite as much emotional, except for one song, which I'll mention in a minute. I can't see myself listening to this as an album.
I might go back and listen to a few more, and
maybe after I see it more times, because I'm going to see it some more. We'll see. But
so this is the Subspace Rift thing.
Now, when I first saw this, I thought, "Is that the ribbon?" From Generations.
Yeah,
it looks different, I know, but I thought proto ribbon before they mess with it. I don't know.
Starts off showing that she's managing all this stuff. Yeah, there is one thing that I wondered, like, throughout this whole thing, the whole show, she's talking about, I'm the communications officer. Everything goes through me. Well, she must sleep at some time.
There's other
one. Yeah.
Well, all those people on the bridge are heads of departments. So she actually has people that report to her in the communications department.
They make it seem like she's the only operator. And
I know.
If she goes
that way with all the
everybody
bridge
just
crew.
can't talk to each other. Like,
yeah. But I like what she was doing at this point in the episode, because it reminded me of the old switchboard operators.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's neat, again, to see close-ups of those computer consoles, because they interpreted the old flashy bulb lights from TOS in a way that looks as realistic as you can get it, but still looking very, very much like the old set. Very reminiscent.
So Kirk pops on.
Another Kirk thing. He can't stay away from this ship. I think he's falling in love with this ship.
There is something I wanted to ask. I'm surprised it took me this long, but I remember in the original series, people had different badges for their different ships.
Now, that's not actually true.
Okay.
Here's the thing. A lot of people think that. And when you watch the original series, you see those different weird, funky shapes, right? Yeah. But somebody did an analysis, and they looked back over it, and they also showed memos inside that Gene Roddenberry wrote to the producers and stuff about how those things are supposed to be handled. There was one episode, there might have been two, where they messed up, and they did something they weren't supposed to do. So those are anomalies. But other than those, when you look back over the whole series, there's plenty of other examples where they have different shapes, but they were all things like, these folks worked on a starbase or an outpost, and these folks were part of the merchant marine thing that was a civilian thing, and these folks, and they broke it all down and they showed the different symbols for those different things. And then they showed examples of other ships where it was using the Delta. So it kind of gives you the impression, if you don't think about it, that that's what's going on, that every ship has its own thing, but it's not actually true. It never was true in the original series.
Okay.
And a lot of people thought that for a long time, but it was a very convincing article.
Commodore Decker have a different badge, and he's
and it's because he was a Commodore, which is a different. You know, when when Pike was promoted to fleet captain, he had that weird funky thing. It was like a couple episodes ago. Commodores, by the way, are kind of like a wartime only, at least in our world. You know, so that was a special kind of thing he had going on. It wasn't the Constellation's symbol. Oh, and then they showed other crew on the Constellation, and they had normal, with their dead bodies and stuff. Anyway, that's a side thing, but it's kind of interesting for Trek people to know that.
Yeah.
And what's great about that is that, it makes all the other stuff make sense now.
Yeah.
To know that, but
it's a good detail to keep in mind.
I love too. I mean, it would have been so easy in the '60s for them to have made those little metal badges. That just looks so much better than a stitched thing. I think they were thinking of it like mission patches in NASA. And
that makes sense. Yeah. One extra thing I found out that that the actors are mic'd through their badge.
No way.
Yeah, their mics are in their badge.
That's how they do it to keep it near them, and it's obvious. Yeah, that's cool.
I saw that in, I think it's the one with Will Wheaton where he talks about it every episode. And Jonathan Frakes said that on their show, Next Generation, they had the boom mic, so they couldn't ever move around. But you see them moving around all the time because they get to carry their mic around. So.
That's interesting. And there was at least one scene I remember in Next Generation where you got to see the boom come down.
Oh, really?
And the reason they did it is because it was a scene where Deanna Troi is walking toward the camera, but in her reflection's walking further away, and in the reflection you see the boom.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So at this point, this is before the music starts, but never thought I'd say that with a Star Trek, but this is where she finds out that she actually gets the agreement to go on her trip.
Right. Dr. Roger Corby. We've been waiting. They did mention the Corby name in the last episode, I think, briefly. Yeah. They mentioned something about Corby, but it wasn't in this context of her actually going to. It was something about archaeology. Oh, it was back when she went to study the weird phenomenon on that moon in Vulcan.
Right. Yeah.
They mentioned something about Dr. Corby had done something about it or something. And now that looks like she's got an iPad. It's weird. But so now, anybody who knows TOS stuff has been wondering about this whole when's the Roger Corby thing going to come out. And I love how it's all coming together with the relationships, and I could clearly see how this would evolve into what we see in the original series, where they obviously have this close bond, this close feelings for each other, but it's also distant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that in a sec. Obviously,
so this is after they're trying to get different communication stuff into that ribbon, and then they send in the music, and this is where the first song starts, which is called Status Report. Is that right?
Yeah, yes. And I love that they have Spock is the first one that sings.
Yeah, because then they're not messing
Nobody's
around.
messing around, yeah. And he had a good voice, too. They all sounded good, but...
Yeah. I suspect that Pelia probably... She only did backup in all these. She didn't have, like, a major thing. So.
Well, she's got kind of an unusual voice to begin with. It might have been... Although a song with just that voice would have been kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, that's
kind of like the "Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky." Those kind of voices can be interesting in a song.
I think they would have had to tailor a song just for her, and it just wasn't room for it.
And they're trying not to make her that major of a character. She's kind of a second-tier character, really.
I think she'll come and play even more later, but yeah. They had a lot of stuff here.
Almost all the problems they get into lately are because of her. She's the one who said, "Why don't you send a song into it?"
Yeah. Oh,
almost feels like she's trying to make trouble.
No, that was Uhura that said send a song.
No, it was her idea. She said, "Y'all should try to sing a song in there."
That's funny. I love his face on here because if you didn't know this musical was coming, this would be your face right now.
Yeah, you'd be like, "What the hell is going on?"
You'd think you're being pranked.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I think Kirk even says later on, "I thought you guys were pranking me until I sang."
Oh, right.
Like they set it all up to mess with him.
Because he was a visitor on the ship, right. So they're like, "Oh, when he comes on, let's all start." Yeah.
Then you step on the ship, everybody starts singing.
Thought I had rehearsed all this. That's great. Actually, let's back up a little bit, though, because that first song was one of my favorite songs still. I think that was a really well-made song.
Yeah.
I like the rhyming in it. It had a lot of clever rhymes and phrasing and stuff.
I think Ortega's also had a really good little part into it, but she didn't get her own big song.
Oh, when it went back to the bridge, right.
Yeah, but she had a good voice, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's Kirk in the background about to sing his little part. So the next song is Connect to Your Truth. Is that right? Yeah, Connect to Your Truth.
This was not a big song. I didn't really care for this one that much. I thought it was kind of... It had a cool vibe to it that reminded me of a lot of old musicals. So in that sense, it rang true to musicals.
Yeah, it kind of felt like I Am 16 going on 17 feel.
Yes, that's the feel it had.
Yeah.
From Sound of Music, yeah. Right. But all in all, nothing too important really going on there.
Yeah, it was just
a great song.
Kind of telling him how to be a good first officer. That's interesting.
I would have preferred to see a song between Kirk and his brother.
I thought
with their little interactions going on, and their kind of
in fact,
or whatever it
is. Two major ones, which feels a little unbalanced. I mean, she had a good voice, but this happened actually before that. But
I want to mention the Jeffries tubes here because the Jeffries tubes, they did a great job of recreating the look and feel of the original series Jeffries tubes. It's incredibly close. It's like way closer than most of the rest of the ship is, actually. And one cool thing is when there's a scene where they reverse it and they show up the tube.
Mm-hmm.
And usually in the original series, they had it at an angle where it goes up and then you lose it. Like you don't see what's beyond. And this one was like down far enough to where you could see all the way up, and it was like, woo, it goes off into infinity or whatever, however long it is. So that was neat.
Am I wrong? I think in the Deep Space Nine, the Troubles episode, that they also crawled up into this?
Yes, they did. Now, that one was a perfect replica because they were trying to make it look exactly like the original series.
Yeah, that was well done.
But this is like really, they got the colors and everything and the look and feel of it. It's really cool to see.
And then she gets a solo, which turns out to be a great voice.
She has a really good singing voice. Second only to Uhura. I don't remember the actress's name. But
Uhura is Celia Rose Gooding.
Okay. That's Uhura's actress?
Yeah, that's Uhura.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have them all memorized, but...
Oh, I have a list right here.
Okay, good.
Refer to him. Lahan is Christina Chung.
Okay, so that is How Would That Feel, I think.
Yeah.
Is the name of that song.
Really good acting while doing it, too. Like you.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
She really looks like if she was saying this, that's what her eyes would look like.
Yeah.
So really excellent. And it's also cool because of all the characters on the show, her arc is one of the deepest, focused upon arcs in the show. And it's really cool, her arc in this show. In this one episode, an arc that she goes through. It's really cool.
This little part where she calls in.
Yeah. Now, when they bring this up, and because La'an had also said this is a security risk because people can't control what they're saying, she was scared she was going to sing about the time travel stuff. Right. But then I said to my wife, I said, what if Dr. Mbinga says, and the ambassador I murdered? I just like spews it out in the middle.
I wanted to talk about that because there is a moment in a song, I can't remember what, but it's right after they start talking about how this could do something, and both he and Nurse Chapel look at each other like we might say something.
I think I know the part you're talking about. Yeah.
Like over the bed or something, and they both look at each other.
And I'll bet that's what they were worried about.
Yeah. They're thinking like secrets could be revealed, that kind of thing.
I'd be running off to the bathroom every time music started that.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, there was something that Mbinga said that made me like laugh, like just burst out laughing. And it was something like, someone said like, well, good thing we didn't open up the dimension where we're all fuzzy bunnies or something. And he was like, I would have preferred that to this. Like, or no, he said, I would have preferred a dimension that made us all fuzzy bunnies or something like that.
Yeah. He said, and I never sing, I don't sing or whatever. And it makes me wonder if really the actor said that too. So they had the character also say it, because he's only got like 2 lines. Yeah. There's 2 songs, and there's 1 line in one song and 1 line in another song, and that's it. And I'm thinking maybe he doesn't sing well, so they managed to get those 2 lines.
I actually think I thought he sounded well, and who knows if they do a little auto toning or something like that. But
they probably
sounded really well. Yeah. What I did notice though is the actor himself does not have that strong of an accent.
Okay.
So
is he just acting the accent? That's not his real accent. Okay. So when he's saying it didn't have the accent.
I don't actually know where he's from or anything. So he might have been born there and stuff. But when he speaks, like, you can't really hear an accent.
Okay.
So the accent that he has on the show is, much thicker. And when he sings on here, you don't hear the accent.
There was no accent. I thought that was kind of unfortunate. I would have liked to have heard that accent in a singing voice. Although, and his voice is so deep.
Huh? Yeah, to be fair, when you listen to the Beatles, you don't. They almost sound American accents.
Well, I find myself, if I'm singing along with the Beatles song, I start to mimic the British accent because it doesn't sound right if you don't sing it that way.
Right. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, this moment was pretty fun. I loved this.
That's a great picture.
I should make this the thumbnail.
Oh, that's hilarious.
This is almost.
Yeah,
what's funny is this is like something that Kirk would do not in the musical.
I know.
But La'an is back there turning it off, and I thought the other people that aren't involved in this, that are just watching, you can turn it off. I was thinking that, and then she gets up and goes and turns it off.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's good.
That was good.
But right after that, he should have sent out a thing and said, if at all possible, you can stop people from singing, do it. Because who knows what's going to happen? What if someone's sad and they just go, I'm out the airlock, and
Well, I don't think it would make them do anything they wouldn't normally do, but it would make them say something they wouldn't normally say. Right, but I don't think it would do. I think they're going to follow their feelings, whatever that
people
is.
People are dancing.
Yeah, but I don't think they dance out the airlock. I just don't see that happening.
Well, but they don't. Right, but they don't know that, right?
Right. In general, it would be good to end the songs as quickly as you could.
Yeah, seems like there'd be a general like, hey, if you can stop other people,
like we think it's funny, but it would actually be very scary.
Yeah.
Situation if it were.
Keeping Secrets is this song where they float up in the air. for some reason.
I didn't understand why the gravity was turned off. I mean, they didn't say. Uhura turned it off.
No,
from another location.
She does. No, she does. She takes a pad and it shows her. It shows gravity, and she pulls down.
You know what I thought happened, because they showed it. So they cut over to Uhura, and then they cut to the picture of the pad, so it made it look like Uhura. To me, it made it look like Uhura did it from another room. It was like, why is she cutting off the gravity? And I don't understand why she would cut off the gravity here, unless they just thought it made for better dancing.
Because it's out the airlock. Like I said, they're going to do stuff that goes with the song no matter what.
One thing I noticed, though, when they turned the gravity back on, it did what it's supposed to do. What I've always said is, why doesn't it slowly increase the gravity, not just go bam, full?
That would have been funny. Boom, fall on the ground. I like how uncomfortable La'an looks in this moment. Like,
yeah, this one was kind of awkward. I think they could have swapped out like 2 songs out of this for some better moments or better song topics, maybe.
Yeah, I nothing against the singers, I think it was just her singing in this one.
I'm just thinking in terms of the content of what's being said in the song, and is it really important enough to be a song?
Yeah. I think it's a little weird that they didn't. I would have, instead of this song, I would have rather had her and Kirk singing together.
Yeah. I think probably, I mean, if I had to guess, I would guess that whoever plays Una, whatever that actress is,
Rebecca Romaine,
that she's probably a really good singer. And so they found ways to bring her in these.
Yeah, she did.
She
really
sings
well
with her, then she sings with Kirk, and so okay, the disco Klingons.
You know who's playing the Klingon, right?
No, who?
It's Bruce Horak, the same Himmer.
Who?
The guy who plays Himmer.
Who's Hammer?
Not Hammer, Himmer from the.
Who's Hammer?
From the first series, the blind. What's his name?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I can't remember their names now. It starts with an A. Yeah, that's him.
Oh yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Bruce Horak. He played General Garkog.
I'm just wondering, because you don't see that many gold-dressed Klingons. I mean, do you think they put on gold outfits to be dancy? Or do you think it...
Well, I think they might have made... I think the prop department might have made them all glittery for the later part of this, but...
I mean, I could almost see it like some special division or detachment of Klingons. He is a general. Before this. Yeah, and his men had it too, so maybe they're like some special subservice in the military, And it looks cool, but...
So this song...
I actually wish we had gotten more Klingons dancing. I wanted to see more of that, actually.
So this song was pretty good. I'm ready.
Yeah, she's talking about going to the cabin. She doesn't even... The song started as an answer to his question, like, why didn't you tell me? But nowhere in the song does she talk about why she didn't tell him. She just says, I'm ready to go in the song, basically. But
it was breaking up with him in the song, basically.
Yeah. This song, though, had the best dancing choreography. It was really cool.
It had the feel of kind of like You Give Me Fever, kind of like in a small cafe kind of thing.
You're thinking of good comparison songs. Yeah.
It wasn't that slow pace, but it was all eyes on her. She moved around the bar kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a Telluride
here. I didn't think it was her. Like I was like,
really?
That's not her voice, is it? And I had to look.
Yeah. We were reading an article just before this. Supposedly, according to the director, they all really sang. So.
Yeah. You mentioned the Telluride in there. It like dark skin.
There's a bald Telluride with a big beard. That was cool.
Yeah, I saw that. So La'an does something really smart, which is instead of seeing it, out of my control, I'm just going to tell him. So she tells him, but she doesn't tell him anything that will
Right. Now, this is one of my favorite scenes in the show, in the episode. It's not musical, but it's one of my favorite scenes. I mean, it's really hard for her to say the things she said, and I like the way she said it, and I liked Kirk's reaction to it. And then, of course, you get the mention of, I'm involved with somebody, and I'm thinking, like, oh, I wonder if it's Carol Marcus. And then he says Carol,
and she's pregnant. Yeah.
And she's pregnant. It was like, oh, wow, this is going on right at this moment. Things are complicated. He says we're kind of on again, off again. I'm not around enough. And yeah, so that was really cool, too, just as a Kirk background moment. But even aside from that, this was just a good La'an moment for her character.
Yeah, not only was it a great moment for a character, but I'm just so happy that they're making characters do the smart choices instead of them always making the really bad, stupid choices to say this or not say this important.
To force the plot to go in a certain way.
Right. Yeah. She tells him just what he needs to know and tells him everything he needs to know.
It's like, you're about to tell me something.
Yeah. She even recognizes that you're not him.
Yeah.
You have some.
But there's enough similarities where she thought there could be potential. And there probably could have been. But, bad timing. And
so this is, and I was even wondering, like, you never see her in the original series or anything. So what happened? Is something happened to her? So
we don't know.
I mean,
any of these characters that don't continue are up for grabs as far as something happening to them.
Right. Yeah. So, you gotta wonder about that. But her not
they could just as easily be serving on another ship, though.
That's true. So. But her not being romantically attached to Kirk means that she can move on to some other ship or something later on, or like otherwise.
And she feels good that she at least tried. She at least said something, because she would have always been wondering. Yeah. That was cool. Oh, and by the way, how are you feeling about this Kirk?
Yeah, it's growing on.
It's growing on you, isn't it?
He's growing on me.
Same for me.
I don't know if I would be. I think the character is growing on me. I don't know if he's becoming more and more Kirk, but I don't know that he.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it flowing into that later. He does definitely have confidence. For a lieutenant, like, he already acts like a captain, even though he's a lieutenant. He comes onto the bridge. How you doing? He's just like so confident. But another thing is, it made me think about, in this episode, like, technically they could continue this series past Pike and into the first 2 years of Kirk's captaincy. And that could be the 2 years of the 5-year mission, and then the original series is the last 3 years of the 5-year mission.
I would love for that to happen.
Wouldn't that be cool? And you get to see, like, how Bones comes on, and you get to see the friendship really gel together with Kirk and Spock, making Star Trek 2 even better.
Oh, man, that'd be amazing.
Because there's even more. I think that could really be awesome if it goes long enough.
Slow blend into it, yeah. And unfortunately, that means that eventually you'd lose Una and you'd lose
on, and you'd have to find a way to phase them out and bring in Lieutenant Kyle and all these people. Sulu, like, bring in Sulu and Scotty eventually, But here's the thing, like, you could even, this would be really interesting, but like, what I was thinking is, like, how could they continue, like, as these guys get older and stuff, but never actually redo or reboot anything that's been made already? So you still have those 3 years as the original series. That's what happens in those 3 years. But then they could do, like, if they wanted to, they could do a movie once they get older. And this movie takes place between the 5-year mission and Star Trek 1. So toward the end of that movie, Enterprise gets all damaged and stuff, so it has to go in for a refit. And then that's the refit you see in Star Trek 1. And then they could do a movie that takes place between Star Trek 1 and Star Trek 2, because there's a good gap of time there.
Now you're...
That's a big gap of time. And then 2, 3, and 4 are real close together. They happen sequentially. They're like one story, basically. But between 4 and 5, you've got room for.
I think you ought to leave it alone at that point. You don't want
but you could skip all in between and do these older movies once the actors get older and stuff.
I think it's all right to do it right before motion picture.
And they'd be their own story, so they stand alone. Kind of like how Star Trek 5 and 6 stand alone.
Yeah.
But I'd rather see that, though, than trying to cover over or remake those stories that were in those movies.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll do any of that, though. But the most likely thing out of everything I just talked about was maybe going a little bit into Kirk's captaincy. That would be kind of
That'd be pretty cool, yeah. Although it feels a little perfect timing to end the series where Kirk will sit down and the captain.
I know. I think that might be where this whole thing ends with Kirk.
Now, that doesn't mean that they can't go, okay, Strange New Worlds is over, but now a new series of Kirk and his Enterprise for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
You could do that. So
yeah.
And that way you get both best of both worlds. This is the song I'm the X. I don't really need that one.
Was my favorite song.
Really?
Of the whole thing.
This one?
Not because of the music. There were better music songs, but because of Spock's character and what's happening to him here. Because this is super critical. This is the moment where he says, I betrayed I need to go back to my Vulcan roots and do my Vulcan stuff. My core philosophy. This is where this is how he becomes the Spock we know later. And it's a kind of a reaction to a broken heart thing, which is kind of really interesting and really cool. Yeah. And I also love the cleverness of, he's talking about equations and he's talking about the Y, like WHY is Y in the theorem, and I'm the X is in the ex-boyfriend, but the X in the formula. I love that whole cleverness, the double entendre of that. Yeah. But I also just love the emotional power of his character and what he's going through in the song. But musically, I agree, it's not huge musically.
I really like the moment, and I did like those.
This was the most emotional song for me, though, because of that.
Oh, really? Yeah. I thought Lahan's how would you do? How would that feel? What's mine?
I thought she played the emotion of it well, and I care about her character, but it's not Spock.
Not as much as Spock. I mean, for you personally, that was
for me personally, this was the most emotional moment of the episode.
I almost kind of wish that this moment was more talked out, though. And
but
actually,
this is kind of what I was talking about, though, when I said, man, they didn't just have the music be a throwaway thing. They actually integrated important stuff into the music. Sure. Yeah. I think what it's going to do is what it did in Buffy, which is after this is over and you move on, you've still got the memory of a highly emotional experience with these characters, and it makes you feel closer to them. Everything after the Buffy musical, I felt so much more emotionally invested. I mean, I already did with the characters. It's a good show, but it does something to you, when music's involved. So, and that sticks.
People are so much more open about all their feelings all of a sudden. Things that you thought or hinted at and all that stuff.
And it works so much better than like Everybody Gets Drunk episode of both the original series and Next Generation when they did that thing. That worked in an intellectual sense, like it told you how they felt, and you're like, oh, now I know how they feel. But it was just like being told, this, you actually feel it, and so it makes you feel closer to the character.
It's also kind of those moments where the two characters think they're about to die, so one confesses, blah, 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 and then they don't die, kind of.
It's kind of like that.
Same kind of idea. But I thought this was the weakest of the songs on all of the set. If you just listen to music,
musically speaking, I could see that. Yeah.
Nothing against his voice, like we said before.
No, his voice is great. I thought he
just didn't have a strong melody.
Yeah. Now her song.
This
is the strongest musically song, not just in terms of writing, but especially her singing.
Keep Us Connected. her singing is amazing.
She's the best singer, or at least had the best singing performance in this episode.
I don't know if they thought about having a musical episode like day one or whatever of hiring all that, but they were incredibly smart to make her musical because Uhura was like that, right? Like,
that's part of her character. In fact, I would have wanted to know when casting Uhura, can you sing? You know,
right? Yeah, such a strong number here, and kind of like again. This character development from her being, 22 and unsure about herself and all that stuff, and
later she's going to be such a strong character, That's really
realizing
cool.
her place now. She's starting to keep everyone connected and stuff like. Yeah, seeing that kind of stuff is just amazing. It's really good.
And you know what? And this is another reason why I would love for this series to continue into Kirk's captaincy, is because the original series, as cool as it was an old style main character and his friends pyramid show. But Chekhov and Scotty and Uhura, I want to see their episodes and more depth of their characters the way we got to see with the Next Generation people, And we're getting that with Uhura already. So there's just so much more you can do with them in an ensemble arrangement.
Yeah, agreed. So the next song is the Keep Us sorry, the We Are One. But I love this little scene where the camera flips and then you see them go into the run and jump and all that stuff.
I like the choreography in this one. I like the music in it, but I didn't like the lyrics that much. Like, I felt like they were too just repeating, "We are one, we are one, we are one." They could have been a little more creative with the content of the lyrics, I thought, for especially for a finale.
Yeah, I think they were like the writing was concerned about, okay, now I have to have this person. Now I have to have this person because you're showing all aspects.
But like, again, to compare with the Buffy musical, the Walk Through the Fire song in that one, for people that know that show, where they bring everybody together, it's doing that, but it's doing it in a very emotional way with all of their individual parts coming into play.
Layered on different ways, yeah.
Yeah.
This part does layer. They do layer it a little bit, but not...
Yeah, it just kind of feels like they're just repeating that one message over and over again.
I actually feel like the status report, the first song of it,
that did a better job
of all those, because they would do one melody over another,
and then Ortegas comes in and says stuff about her flying the ship and all that, but it's still that same kind of banter about rhyming technical jargon. Yeah.
Kirk has his little moment singing. I want to know what these extras in the background thought of this whole episode. Like, I'd love to hear just their, I get to.
Well, a lot of them are dancing and stuff too.
Yeah,
some of.
But I mean, you can. In fact, the one in the yellow, is that the same person that was sitting next to Christine right there?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think it is. And actually, the same person there. That's weird.
Oh, that's funny. I think it is.
Huh. Oh, what if it turns out that it wasn't an alternate universe, but these two are aliens that are, some kind of, that's funny. I'm sure they were just putting extras back there, and I just happened to grab the screen grab of that same thing, but.
Yeah, I mean, they're not casting 400 or 200 people,
right?
So they just happen to be wandering around.
So this whole song is them trying to basically
up the rhythm,
right? Yeah.
And they said what was interesting too is that there was some kind of to affect the field, it had to have been. This music has to have been caused in the same way. You can't just artificially decide to start singing. It wouldn't do it.
Right.
It would have to be the uncontrolled singing that emerges from this field. Yeah.
This moment.
this thing here. Yeah. Oh my
Oh
god.
man.
And they're all pissed about it the whole time they're doing it because they don't.
I know. For a Klingon, this is so dishonorable.
I mean, they do have music and stuff, but to be forced to do it, that's
sure, yeah. To be forced against your will to do it, yeah. You can see why they had to come and destroy whatever was doing it.
That's funny.
And this is the face he does whenever they're doing their little rap moment, which I thought, again, this is another face you could use for defining the whole. I talked to a couple episodes ago about this actor's ability to do comedy like real subtly.
Yeah, but that's why I want to see some little more drama out of him at times too. I want to see him.
Well, I think he can do drama. I mean, we've seen the drama enough. So, but he is really subtle and really good at just having this great comedic feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then while the Klingons are doing their little beat, she looks behind him, and Sam Kirk is going like,
"Oh, is he? I didn't notice that.
Did you miss that? Oh, he's like,
I missed that.
Good. Yeah, you gotta go back and watch it. It is hilarious. That's what made me laugh. That was one of the moments that made me laugh out loud.
That's funny.
He's going like. All right, so they bust the music,
and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna try." Oh, this scene right here, though, she mentions, okay, she thought she had time off, and she's been pulled away on a priority 1 mission. That means like drop everything. You're doing this thing. I'll bet that she goes off on this priority 1 mission because some dramatic stuff's going down, and she's going to get into something. They're going to have to come there too, and that's what the it's going to
be the Gorn.
The climax of the season is going to be.
Yeah. It's got to be the Gorn thing because they talked about it first episode of this.
I think it will be, but I'll bet you she's in it too. And oh no, girlfriend of main character in a climactic episode. That's not good.
That's not good.
Oh well, we'll see.
Yeah. She doesn't know about his future issues, right?
No, I wouldn't think he'd tell anybody.
Is it irresponsible for him not to tell her?
That's a rough question. I don't know. Maybe that's why he's been kind of hesitant about some of the relationships.
Well, that'd be cool if they mentioned that, but he hasn't said that. He's just said that I've always done this kind of thing, right? But it seems like basically he's got like a terminal disease. He knows that. Yeah,
I would think you'd have to treat it the same way, but you also at the same time, you can't talk about that. You just have to not get into relationships if that's how you felt about it, I guess.
Right. But I mean,
and he's already past that point here. So.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think
maybe the Gorn will take care of it for him.
Oh, no.
We'll see. I don't know.
I think it'd be interesting if they had that be a struggle for him.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to bring up.
This moment where Uhura says Spock just got done having another diplomatic meeting with the Klingons, and he's drunk,
staggering in. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's funny. Something about a drunk Spock is always funny. And then
I mean, it's interesting that he's got this little way of interacting with Klingons. It almost sounds like. You remember in Errand of Mercy, the episode with the Organians, how he goes down there and he's a traitor in Kiva Centrillium. I remember that. And for some reason, Kor kind of liked him. Or he was suspicious of him because he's a Vulcan, but he... I don't know. I don't know if they're alluding to any of that.
But. Interesting. And then the moment where... Uhura just starts singing a little bit, and they're like, "Really?"
They're like, "Oh no!"
Like, "Oops."
Yeah.
No, this was a great episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's always going to be a memorable one, I'm sure.
And the question of, are they going too far? Are they bending it too much to where it's not even the same kind of thing? You can ask that, but in the end, I am greatly entertained. I love.
I mean, the original series had an episode come out on Halloween where they went down to a haunted castle and there were wicked witches and stuff. And then they had an episode around 4th of July where there was a planet that had the American flag and
Yeah. I remember, so a friend of mine a long time ago, she told me, she was young whenever these were coming out, teenager, I think, whenever the original series was coming out. And she forever was like trying to get her dad to watch it. He's like, you got to watch the show. It's amazing and stuff. And then, have I told you this?
No, I'm just imagining the various episodes you might come into.
And she said he was always like very proper and stuff, all that stuff. But he finally walked in and was like, all right, show me this show that you love and stuff. He sits down and there's a little person writing Kirk like, yeah.
Oh, Kirk, that like one. Bread and Circuses.
Yes.
The most ridiculous freaking scene you could imagine. And she was hoping he was going to see Balance of Terror or something like that, with the Sirius with the Romulans.
And he was like, what is this mess? You got
Made it look like it was the Biddy Hill show or something.
I know.
And I've heard a similar story where somebody watched it for the first time, and the first thing they see is Sulu with the sword, and they're like, "Is he always like that, running around with his shirt off?"
That's just his character.
Yeah, you really need context for a lot of these.
I mean, you could even go into the Next Generation, especially seasons 1 and 2, and find some really wacky ones. Like we mentioned before, at one point they're all, Merry Men and Robin Hood, and
I kind of like seasons 5 or 6 and 7 of Next Generation because they started getting to where they were like, what else can we do? And they started getting wilder and wilder with their ideas. They had things with Riker going crazy, and
they had a few mishaps as far as like the one with Data and the mask,
or the one where the crew devolves.
Oh yeah, that was really bad.
That was more entertaining though than the one with Data with the mask. That was just boring. But
just awful. I actually saw an interview with Brent Spiner talking about that, and he said that episode was so rushed, and they gave him like so many characters to do that he said it's like the worst thing he ever made.
Yeah. That's what it feels like when you watch that episode. It feels rushed.
It feels really rushed.
Like they just sort of, let's come up with something. Here's a mask. Put that on. Some ancient stuff happened. Yeah.
Just make up voices. 2 characters.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's fine as long as they have a good. Now, one of the things that we can talk about now, we were talking about at the beginning of the season, I kind of thought, I knew they were going to go back to more of a traditional, almost TOS-ish episodic thing, but I thought the season was going to have some kind of an arc to it. And it turns out it doesn't have an arc at all. It's just pure episodic, This happened and this happened.
Well,
this happened. There's a little bit of referencing of things that happened in the past with each of the characters, but it's not what I'd call like a season arc,
Not the story-wise, but the characters have their own story arcs.
The characters have their own arcs. They are keeping track of that, and that's fine. But story-wise, in terms of the overall arc of the season, there's not really a season arc. It's just a bunch of episodes, and that's okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be. If they want to be pure episodic with it, with more character consistency than TOS had, or character lineage.
I actually think that's where I like the episodic feel. I think what they're doing so well is keeping the character arcs going, which is where I think the original series and Next Generation really didn't do well. And that's why DS9 is a lot of people's favorites, is because that's where they started doing that with character arcs and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think this is really the best of both worlds. This not that episode, but this is combining the character arcs with.
So the stories are episodic, but the characters that stay with you throughout these adventures. Yeah, the only other quibble I'd have about the seasons, they really didn't have enough episodes of getting out and seeing strange new worlds. We want to see more exploration, going and just they come upon this planet and some crazy stuff's going on here, and they spend a lot of time back at Starbase and on leave and stuff like that. They were good episodes, but it would be cool to see more exploration in the next
My
season.
biggest quibble would be that there's only 10 episodes this season.
I know.
I want 20. I want 30.
I want 20 episodes. Yeah. What is this with streaming that they think it's okay to do 10 episodes? Maybe it's because so much budget is in it. I mean, they look like movies. They don't,
and they are longer. The TOS ones and all that stuff. They had commercials and all that stuff. That's
true. It's probably a little longer, but yeah.
This episode was an hour long, like a full hour, no ads.
I think what's happening with sci-fi streaming, you look at like Mandalorian and stuff. Mandalorian looks as good as any Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And so does Andor. So I think what it is like, it used to be like 80s and 90s and stuff. You would just expect when you watched a sci-fi show versus a movie that the show wouldn't look as good as a movie. But I don't think people put up with that anymore, because everything's on your TV or your phone. Sure. So you don't really distinguish between the two. You just know when you load up a Marvel movie, it looks way better than when you load up this show that was on a lower budget. So maybe that's playing into it, where they have to do fewer episodes because they put so much into them.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then think about what you get in terms of movies. When you compare it to TV, you're like, oh man, I only get 10 episodes. When you compare it to a movie, though, think of how many hours of Mandalorian we've had if it had been a series of movies. You've got several movies of Mandalorian. So
yeah, there's something about movies have to have basically one story from beginning to end in a way, unless you're doing trilogies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
So at least you have enough time to get into the background.
Series, you can have several episodic stuff. You can have all kinds of different stories going on. So, and that actually means the budget would be bigger, I would think, because if you take all the budget for these 10 episodes versus the budget for maybe 2 movies or something like that, I wonder where they would land, because they have to go to different planets. They have to build different sets just for one episode,
And I also wonder how things like the volume or whatever they call it, stagecraft, or that the screen background. So I wonder how much that has affected the budgets. What they can pull off, because they still use a lot of CGI even in those scenes. So yeah, it's hard to say.
All right, well. That was our look at the musical episode of Star Trek. Let us know what you think. Did they go too far? What was your favorite song?
Yeah, love to hear your input.
Yeah, what was your favorite song?
I think it was the Spock one with the X. I'm the X or whatever.
Just the song.
For emotional. No, that was my favorite song emotionally and plot wise. My favorite song musically was the one that Uhura sang toward the end.
Oh, okay. I think Status Report, the first one that they all kind of layered.
That's a really good one too. I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else you want to add?
No.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week after, unfortunately, the final season of final episode of this season, and hopefully everyone will survive that one.
We'll see. I don't know about hopefully. It could be good to have a dramatic death.
Well, I like all the characters, so
I just want it to be good, whatever it is.
Sure. All right. Thanks, everybody.